Good evening. This evening's special board meeting is called to order at 5:05 p.m. Roll call, please, Ms. Amaker.
President Weinstein,
Present.
Vice President Wallach,
Here.
Clerk Wood,
Here.
Trustee Kelly,
Here.
Trustee Scott,
Here.
Trustee Kermode,
Here.
Trustee Napier is absent, Superintendent Larson Everson,
Present.
and I'm Idalia Amaker.
Thank you. Please stand and join me in the flag salute and a moment of silent reflection. Agenda item 2, approval of the agenda. Is there any discussion regarding the agenda? Do I have a motion to approve the agenda?
Kelly, make the motion.
I'll second.
Thank you. Roll call vote, Ms. Amaker.
President Weinstein,
Aye.
Vice President Wallach,
Aye.
Clerk Wood,
Aye.
Trustee Kelly,
Aye.
Trustee Scott,
Aye.
Trustee Kermode,
Aye.
Motion carries. Thank you. Agenda item 3, public comments. Public comments will be allowed on each specific action item prior to board action. The board president will recognize any member of the audience wishing to speak on items not on the agenda, but directly related to school business. Pursuant to Board Bylaw 9323, the board may limit comments to no more than 3 minutes per person. And I see we have at least one public comment because I have one yellow paper. If anyone has a public comment, and please get a yellow paper to me or raise your hand after I go through the papers. Ms. Lauren, forgive me, I didn't want to mess up your last name. Can you please say the name for the record?
Yes, and I don't blame you. My name's Lauren Gazakanian, and I have 2 elementary school students in the district. My 4-year-old son, Andre, is in the Tompkins speech program and absolutely loves his teacher. And my 6-year-old daughter thinks she is the teacher at her first grade class at Cummings Elementary. After the shooting at Uvalde last week, it was hard putting them on the bus to go to school. It's hard thinking of those parents who attended an award ceremony just that morning, not knowing it would be the last time that they saw their babies. I don't know how I'm going to keep my composure at Aria's award ceremony tomorrow morning. I'm even more concerned about safety given the fact that on May 23rd, Cummings Valley had a lockdown that us parents were not informed of until 6:35 p.m. I don't disagree with why that happened. I think that was fine, better safe than sorry, but it would have been nice to have been made aware of it before the evening, as well as the recent arrest of a 12-year-old Tehachapi boy for making threats against the schools. As the gunman walked through the halls of Robb Elementary, the school shared on Facebook that all students and staff are safe inside. There's a lot of controversy right now about whether that door he entered was locked, unlocked, left open, etc., but it is clear that safeguards failed. What is Tehachapi Unified doing to ensure this doesn't happen here? I'm not talking about lockdown drills with students. Those only traumatize, and since we've been doing them for so long, any would-be shooter has gone through them and knows exactly where to look. What is staff in the district doing to ensure mistakes like those made in Uvalde don't happen here? And I'm wondering why the district has not sent us parents an email in the wake of Uvalde to let us know about these procedures. Like many parents in America right now, I'm scared and I am angry, and I need to know that my kids are safe behind doors and barriers that are locked, and that the procedures are unsafe to ensure that no one can walk onto campus without anyone knowing that they are there. Thank you.
Thank you.
There's in school
Pardon me?
maps.
Yeah,
or
gotcha. Thank
section.
you. Ms. Purdy?
Hi, is that right? Yeah, I think so.
Can you state your name for the record?
Gail Purdy. I'm here to appreciate the chance to have a voice. I think it's really important, and that you hear it and it's recorded, and you know that there's people that are interested, and we appreciate that opportunity. Thank you. I wanted to just kind of let you know where I stand, which you may already know, that I'm for the larger group of board members, for 7. I think a bigger voice is better than fewer voices. I also wanted to mention that I think there's ways to harden the schools from shootings, that you actually harden the schools, and there's studies on how to do that, and I plan on looking into that this summer. Forgot what else I was going to talk about on there. I put 3 things. But anyway, so those are the main things, and again, great appreciation for the transparency. It takes a big effort to do that, and it shows an intent, and I appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Elliott?
I'm actually for the public hearing.
Oh, okay. Excuse me. Other public comment? Come on up, sir.
My name's Larry Mule. On February 15, 2019, in case of Pico Neighborhood Association et al. versus the City of Santa Monica, the court sustained claims that the city's at-large election system violated the California Voting Rights Act. The court further ordered that all future elections for seats on the Santa Monica City Council be based on a 7-district map drawn up by the expert of the plaintiffs, and that the city hold a special election on July 2nd, 2019 for all 7 seats on the Santa Monica City Council using this district map. This case seems to me mirrors what you were afraid of was going to happen if you were sued. But you removed a judge's decision by getting ahead of a perceived lawsuit and became your own judge. You've already eliminated the at-large election system and are no longer in violation of the Voting Rights Act. The judge's decision to keep 7 seats and have a special election for all 7 seats at one time seems to me to be the fairest way to give equality to all the communities. In our case, we could put all 7 seats up for election in November. Thank you.
Thank you. Additional public comment? Okay. Item 4, public hearing pursuant to Elections Code Section 10010A2 to receive public input regarding content of draft trustee area maps and proposed sequence of elections. The special meeting is adjourned at 5:15 PM to hold a public hearing pursuant to Election Code 10010A2 to receive public input regarding the content of trustee area maps and the proposed sequence of elections. The meeting to reconvene after the close of the public hearing. To start out the public hearing, there will be a presentation by Dr. Levitt, our demographer, and attorneys regarding a trustee area proposed maps and the proposed sequence of elections. Are there any public comments? First, okay.
All right. Good evening. My name is Dr. Justin Levitt with National Demographics. If you could enable the screen sharing so I can share my presentation.
Thank
or
you,
if wanna-
Dr. Levitt. Welcome.
Here we go. Okay. There we go. So it's a pleasure to be here tonight to share with these initial draft area maps with you. We look forward to the process of making this transition and to working with you on improving the maps that we have here tonight, potentially, or getting your feedback on the maps tonight in anticipation of adopting a single member or by this area trustee map. Just to give us a brief recap of where we have been. This is the third public hearing following 2 public hearings in May, where we overviewed the process and we provided information on the criteria and communities of interest. The draft maps were published May 15th May 25th, sorry, last week. And they've been available for at least 7 days. Following tonight's meeting, we have another public hearing on June 9th to continue our discussion of the draft maps, including any revised draft maps requested by the board tonight. This is leading up to a hearing on June 16th to select a map and to pass a resolution recommending the map to the County Committee on School District Organization. The County Committee and School District Organization will then schedule a brief public hearing in the district to hear about the map and the process we used. And the first by trustee area election will be held in November of 2022. Just to recap our criteria, we can think of these criteria as the bullet points we're looking for to judge and evaluate the different maps. I can tell you straight off that each of our maps has equal population. We are below the 10% maximum difference between the largest and smallest trustee areas as required by the Supreme Court. Each of our maps does have at least one trustee area with a substantial Latino population. Although none of our districts are majority minority, there certainly are one district, at least in each map, one trustee area in each map that has a substantial Latino population. In addition, we've followed traditional redistricting principles in drafting these maps, including the direction of the board given at the last hearing. So where it really comes down to is kind of this very subjective decision, but also kind of, your communities and your district better than anyone else. And so which of the maps, which of the options will do the best job at representing the communities of interest, following the boundaries that make sense for your community, and how we understand issues like compactness in terms of the district. And so let's take a look into some of these draft maps. And I'll just note for the record that in addition to the maps we have here in the presentation, we also have an interactive web viewer. And I really like that for the district because obviously it's really hard to see street level detail into Tehachapi or Golden Hills on a big map that covers a large area. But the interactive review map allows you to zoom in and out, and streets will appear as you zoom in closer, so you can see exactly where that line is drawn. We've just included Highway 58, some of the other major roads, and some of the community boundaries on the maps here in the presentation for simplicity. But I do want to make sure people know that they can go online and find a version that has all of the little tiny streets, and you can search for addresses and so forth on those maps as well. Now we've done 2 7-area maps and 2 5-area maps, just to illustrate what the different options are. We start with map 701, which has the lowest deviation of any of the maps at just about 3%. 701, you'll notice that the maps that have 7 areas start with the number 7. The maps with 5 areas start with number 5. What this map was attempting to do is to create more compact, smaller areas in the more built up or urban portions of the district. So we've created, for example, 2 areas, areas 5 and 6, entirely in Tehachapi, the city itself. 2 areas, 3 and 4, are predominantly in the Golden Hills community. And area 2 links some of the more agricultural or built up areas of Bear Valley Springs and Golden Hills, south end of Golden Hills. Now for this map and for all of the maps, we have excluded the population at the prisons following the state's reassignment or realignment of prisoner data. We've used that data set. So that large bit of population that's at the Tehachapi correctional facilities are not included in our numbers. These are only residents of the district. And we have ignored where trustee areas, which trustees live in which trustee areas, with the exception of as we're looking at election sequencing or which areas would be up in which year. And as you can see, what we've done in this map is created a system with compact districts that are more or less following community boundaries and major roads. We do have several areas in which trustees are paired. And to explain kind of the thinking and how sequencing works, the state elections code requires that we put the trustee areas that would be up for election in 2024. That is, they contain a member whose natural election cycle would be in 2024 in that year. And so in this map, for example, areas 2, 3, and 6 would be up for election in 2024, and areas 1, 4, 5, and 7 would be up in 2022. That would maintain the 7 members on the board. Those members that would be up for election in 2022, but would reside in an area assigned to 2024, they would end their term in 2022, and then they could choose to run again 2 years later in that area, but they would not continue to serve on the board for those 2 years. And that way you would continue to maintain the 7-member board. Now, one of the things we looked at doing in this map, and I think it's one of the big trade-offs that we'll talk about throughout the 5 district maps as well, this puts most of the large rural areas, the unpopulated portions of the district, in just 2 trustee areas. Areas 1 and 7 contain the vast areas that don't have any people living in them. In contrast, what we wanted to do in 702, for example, is divide that area up more evenly. And so in 702, we still have 2 more densely populated areas in areas 4 and 5, but all the other areas in the 702 have some of that unpopulated national park land, state park land, and other really rural communities. Now, this also creates one area that includes much of, again, not just North Tehachapi, so there's no area that's entirely in the city of Tehachapi, because both of the 3 areas that include Tehachapi also cross into neighboring communities. Area 5 into Golden Hills, Area 6 into that large northeastern area, and 7 to the south to Mountain Meadows, as well as the southern unincorporated areas of the district. This one does create an area, Area 1, that almost is entirely in Bear Valley Springs. It also creates a Stallion Springs centered Area 2 that does not just link it with the other southern communities, but really creates one that's more of a southwestern focused trustee area. That also allows us to create a trustee area along Highway 58 in the north that connects Keene and Golden Hills, kind of along that entry into the Tehachapi area. And as you can see here, this actually creates, very obvious. Areas 1, 3, and 7 would be up for election in 2024. Areas 2, 4, 5, and 6 would be up for election in 2022 in this November. We took the same principles in our 5 district maps. So in our 501 map, we have one area, or sorry, we have one area that's entirely in Golden Hills, Area 3. We have one area that the population is almost entirely in Tehachapi, in that big blue area 2. I know the 2 is missing. It's underneath the little label above, but it's Area 2, which includes almost all of the city of Tehachapi, about 3/4 of the city of Tehachapi, as well as the northern areas north of Highway 58. And again, we've created a large, we've put all of Bear Valley Springs and Keene and most of the area to the western end of the district in Area 1. And then the southern portions of the district are in Area 5. Now, in order to go from 7 to 5 members, we anticipate that you would keep 3 areas on the 2024 cycle. So areas 1, 2, and 3 each contain a trustee whose current cycle of election is 2024. Those 3 areas would continue to elect in 2024. And then areas 4 and 5 would hold their election in 2022. And you would be able to go from 7 members to 5 members after this November if you adopted a 5-area map. That's kind of the assumption that Ms. Leone and I have been working with in looking at the sequence of elections. And we legally do have to post a proposed sequence of elections. I'll just caveat that it may not be the final sequence of elections. We can certainly talk about that more if you have any questions about that. In map 502, this was aimed more at dividing some of our communities. For example, we wanted to get 2 districts or 2 trustee areas into Bear Valley Springs. We also have a substantial division both of Golden Hills and Tehachapi. It's really unavoidable to have one sort of more small, compact area within the city of Golden Hills and Tehachapi. But this one really creates 4 large rural or trustee areas that include portions of the rural community. This one links Stallion Springs to Bear Valley Springs rather than Mountain Meadows, and puts in more of the city of Tehachapi in Area 5. So Area 5 now goes farther north into Tehachapi, and where it kind of curves around, it's following a major road that runs through through Golden Hills out towards Stallion Springs and Bear Valley Springs. So we are trying to follow the natural roads and other boundaries. Again, areas 1, 2, and 5 would be up for election in 2024. And then we anticipate that areas 3 and 4 would be up for election in 2022. Again, reducing the number of seats from 7 to 5 in a single cycle. In all of these, we have tried to ensure to the extent we could that we respected community boundaries, but also tried to make sure that the elementary schools themselves had multiple representatives. We did not pay attention to the 3 current areas in drawing these maps, seeing this more as a fresh slate, using those attendance areas and the census and other city boundary of Tehachapi as kind of our starting points for a lot of these maps, as well as your major roads and other natural features. And so I am happy to talk about these maps in any more detail. What we're hoping to get out tonight is initial impressions. If there's a map that simply does not work, or a map that almost works, but you want to see some changes or variation in, we need to get that posted today, if possible. Not possible. We need to get it posted today. And so if there is any changes, we need to know now, so that we can get that posted tonight and you can have it for discussion on your next meeting on June 9th. And so with that, I will turn it over to Ms. Leone, who wants to say a word before public comment starts. You're muted, Margaret.
I got it. Thank you so very much, Dr. Levitt. I did, prior to the public discussion, want to address, if I may, President Weinstein, the the comment or the question of one member of the public about the election rotation and whether we should be having all 7 members up at the same time. And I am familiar, very familiar with the City of Santa Monica case.
Thank you, Ms. Leone. Please do.
Thank you. All right. City of Santa Monica is a charter city, and they have the ability to change electoral systems and specify a rotation of election that is much broader than what is available to school districts. And also the order for that city to have all 7 members on the ballot at the same time came after it was found liable under the California Voting Rights Act. And the court ordered terms shortened and everybody on the ballot at the same time. That was not the city's choice. The city could have made that choice, but did not. I do also want to mention that the City of Santa Monica case is up on appeal. It's before the California Supreme Court. There hasn't been oral argument, and we have no idea when that will occur. School districts are different, and that's because they have less flexibility in determining the rotation of the elections. And key to the question of whether there is authority to put all 7 members on the ballot at the same time are several education code sections which provide expressly that no terms shall be cut short. Putting everybody on 2022 would require shortening terms, and that would violate the education code. So that's why we're doing a staggered rotation and proposing a staggered rotation, but I just wanted to clear that up before we got into the public discussion.
Thank you, Ms. Leone. Okay, so this is the public hearing. There are public comments on this. Ms. Elliott.
Thank you. And did I do that right? Did I turn it on? Okay, very good, thanks. My name is Claudia Elliott, and I just have a couple of questions perhaps for your consultants, and then maybe an observation. Once I noticed that the maps changed from the first set to the second set in terms of the sequence of elections box that was on the first bunch that I printed the day they came out, and the new set that I printed today that has the end of term for trustees. So my question is, were there other changes, or was the change only in the key?
Dr. Levitt or Ms. Leone, can you answer that? Was the change just in the key, or were there other changes?
I'm happy to answer that, and Dr. Levitt can jump in too. The only change in those maps was the key, and the purpose was to provide additional public information.
Okay, thank you, and it was helpful information. So then I asked this at the informational meeting the other day, and this might be for those folks as well. In the city and the Board of Supervisors redistricting process, there was an opportunity for someone else, a group, an individual, to suggest a different map. And I just wondered if that's different in the education code, or is it an option and we just haven't explored that, or what?
Again, Ms. Leone or Dr. Levitt, can you please answer that?
Do you want to do it? Well, let me give it a try. We are, that option could potentially be made available. It would require development of mapping tools that happened in the county. And it also happened, I'm not sure, Justin, whether you did that in the city of Tehachapi. Generally, those tools take some training. They're not intuitive, but they're also not impossible. And the redistricting in the county and in the city of Tehachapi was on a much more relaxed schedule. So it was able to accept and process numerous maps. We are having the required public hearings really within it's the minimum amount of time, within 7 days of each other. So if we were to get a public map 3 days ahead of time, we wouldn't even be able to consider it. So that option at this point has not been made available. In lieu of that option, the detailed map viewer that hopefully people are using is available, where map lines can be overlaid and evaluated. And the thought being that would allow for informed commentary on lines. The mapping option would have fit more comfortably with a process that took the district to 2024. Moving up the schedule to 2022 as a practical matter eliminated that option. Dr. Levitt, do you have anything to add to that?
I'll just note how rare it is for school districts to engage in mapping tools. I mean, it is always feasible, and there are districts that do it. But I echo what Marguerite said about the time frame. It would push us beyond, I think, our limits for getting this done for the 2022 election. But it's also fairly rare for school districts to invest in that. But perhaps when we look to revisit this again in 10 years, with the more relaxed time frame that would provide, we would, that would be something we could bring up to the board then in advance, and the board could request that, and as part of a redistricting contract.
Thank you very much. I did understand that your time frame that you adopted would probably not have allowed that. My question to the board, which you can answer or not, or think about or not, is whether you knew that was an option, and whether when you chose to take such a very short amount of time to do this, that did not have to be done, but in this time frame, but was by your choice, whether you were aware that you were closing out a public involvement option that was used successfully in the city of Tehachapi just months ago. So that was just a question. And then when I looked at the sequence, and I do understand that you told your folks to not worry about where you lived and what these changes might be doing to your position on the board or your potential for future service. But perhaps you also didn't think about that for those of you coming up for election in 22, I do have it written down somewhere, but it's not on the top of my head. At least some of you were elected in 2018 and some previously. So if I have calculated this correctly, a couple of board members who are coming up in 22 might not have any opportunity to run based on this sequencing. And I would suggest that perhaps a given board member might have said, well, I don't want this to be about me, but perhaps the board members in total might think about whether you would be disenfranchising voters who did in fact vote for those folks at some time and might want them to have an opportunity to run for re-election. And then mostly these are just observations because I've spent a lot of time with this. And my final observation is simply that I found it interesting that when we can see the number of areas that would not have an incumbent, that in a certain way that sort of suggests to us the geographic areas of our community that perhaps have been underrepresented in the at-large system. Anyway, those are my thoughts. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there any additional public comments to this public hearing? Yes, come on up, please.
Good evening. My name is Jamie Cookson. At the last meeting I was able to attend, it was discussed amongst you all that a major goal of redistricting was better representation of minorities, and I applaud that goal. I think that's a wonderful goal. And so with that as the primary goal, as I was looking at all 4 maps, to me there really is only one map you should all be supporting. Map 701 includes 3 regions that have over 30% Hispanic population, whereas the remaining maps, 702, 502, and 501, only have 1 region in each of those with over 30% Hispanic population. I'm a parent of 3 children at Tompkins Elementary, and I have seen firsthand that yes, we do have a large Hispanic population, and I feel they would benefit greatly from map 701. What strikes me most about the 500 maps and how they're drawn is that we have parts of downtown Tehachapi, a high Hispanic population, with Sand Canyon and parts of Keene, which also have high Hispanic populations, but very different needs. The downtown community versus the outliers, in the 500 maps, we're grouping them all together, and I just personally don't feel that's the best representation of the needs of those areas. In another 500 map, we have Stallion Springs, Alpine, Country Oaks, Mountain Park, Cameron Canyon, Mountain Meadows, all lumped together. And while those are all outlying areas, I think they have different needs as well. Also in the 502 map, you have part of Golden Hills lumped with Keene. It just seems like we are such a diverse community. The 7-seat maps strike best, and of the 7-seat maps, 701 is clearly my preference. There's one map in the 500s where you could have 3 representatives less than a mile from each other in the Golden Hills downtown area who would represent 2/3 of the district. But they could potentially live less than a mile from each other. It doesn't seem like the best call if we're really seeking better representation for all of our families. I do want to state in closing, I fully understand the need to redistrict and redraw, so I am not attacking that at all. I understand we needed to remove the at-large positions. I do not understand the rush to change from 7 to 5 and the removal of the public vote on such a matter. That part still bothers me, and I don't know how else to word that. So my comment is simply, please choose to redistrict for the most diverse representation, which would be map 701 that has 3 highest Hispanic population percentages. Because to me, personal take on this, support from you for any other map will honestly drive further speculation that the change is not primarily for better representation. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there any other public comment? Please come up.
Hi, thank you. I'm relatively new to the Tehachapi area. I moved here from Arizona where there is no law where there has to be districts, and I was actually just involved in trying to get district elections in Scottsdale, Arizona, which has 280,000 people in at-large elections. And with 280,000 people in at-large elections, there was concern about being able to attract candidates if we were to split it up into a whopping 3 districts. With that in mind, here are my thoughts about what's been presented tonight. I want to thank you guys for the transparency of this process, as well as the consultants for their presentation. Like the previous speaker, I also prefer the 7 district maps. I have a lot of concerns about the 5 district maps. 501, it mentioned that there'd be elections in 2022, 2022, and 2024 in one district. I wonder if that was perhaps a mistake or if I just wasn't reading it correctly, because I don't know how there'd be 2 elections in 1 year for 1 district.
Dr. Levitt or Ms. Leone, could you answer that question, please?
Sure. We changed the label, and that label we're referring to is that there are 3 trustees currently residing in that district.
Okay.
2 of whom are on the 2022 election cycle and 1 on the 2024 cycle.
I understand now. So that would put 2 incumbents potentially against each other in 2022. I personally don't prefer the maps that group BVS and Keene together. While they may be close together on a map, they are not physically close together, nor do I feel like the culture of the 2 communities is similar. I preferred the maps that put Keene with Golden Hills just because I feel like this makes a lot more geographic sense. I also did not like map 502 because I don't like the fracturing of BVS. I have friends all throughout BVS, and we're a tight-knit community. I don't think it makes sense to crack BVS and separate it into 2 districts. I do like map 701 and 702. Recognizing what the previous speaker just said, I do have concerns about attracting candidates for map 701 in districts 1 and 7. We may see that as underrepresentation. We may also see that as a lack of interest in school board, or a lack of qualified individuals who feel that they can run for school board. I don't know if that's true, but it's a concern I have. Again, thinking back to Scottsdale, that's my concern with 1 and 7 is the ability to attract candidates in those 2 very rural districts. I really like map 702. And one of the reasons why I like that is I think that by cracking up to Tehachapi, it ensures that there will always be representation. That said, it definitely ensures that the rural areas, well, it doesn't ensure, let me correct this. It increases the likelihood that the outlying rural areas will be represented by someone in Tehachapi. And we need to ask if that is going to be the interest of the people in these outlying areas to still have the representation in Tehachapi. So of the maps presented tonight, I really think that 701 and 702 are the better of the maps. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other public discussion for the public hearing? Hearing none, the public hearing is closed and the special meeting is reconvened at 5:48 p.m. I would like to take a 10-minute break, if we could. reconvening to the special meeting at 5:58 PM. Agenda item 6, board discussion and possible action to give a direction to the demographer concerning content of draft trustee area maps and proposed sequence of elections. Superintendent Larson Everson, could you provide us an introduction?
Thank you, President Weinstein, of course. This discussion and the potential board action are guided by Election Code Section 10010A2. After reviewing the draft maps and hearing public comments, the board may have discussion and may give direction to the demographers. Thank you.
I apologize real quick, President. Did we forego 5 or did I miss it? The update on the waiver application?
Thank you, Trustee Kelly. I did indeed skip an agenda item. We will go back to agenda item 5, update regarding status of waiver of election application. This is an information and discussion item. Information will be presented by legal counsel regarding the status of the waiver of the election application that the board approved at the May 17th, 2022 special board meeting. Ms. Leone?
Thank you, President. And with permission, I will share my screen. This is a PowerPoint summary, and this has been posted. Let me see if we can get a big version of it. This has been posted to the district's website for review. And this is an update of where we are on the waiver. I want to recap. At May 17, there was an agenda item 5, and that was for possible adoption of a resolution proposing that the number of trustees be reduced from 7 to 5 members. That failed. So as we sit here and discuss maps, there is no presumption that we're going to have 5 trustees. We have a 7 trustee board, and you've looked at map 701 and 702 with regard to that circumstance. However, in the conversation, a number of the trustees noted that it would have been good to be able to see both 7 and 5 area maps, and the demographer was instructed to prepare them. However, as we talk, we have a 7 member board. Agenda item 17, agenda item 7 on May 17 had to do with the waiver, because as we discussed at that meeting and perhaps previously, you can't on your own decide just to reduce the size of your board. That has to be approved either by the voters or the county committee with a waiver. Well, it has to be approved by the county committee, and that can be final with a waiver. It needs to go to the voters. In order to have any chance of reducing the 5 from 7 to 5 in time for one of the upcoming elections, a waiver would be necessary. And so we were instructed to seek that waiver with the understanding that it would be withdrawn if the board eventually decided to stay with the 7 members, and that's where we are right now. So this is where we are on the process. Right after that board meeting, there was a mandatory consultation with stakeholders. That was convened by invitation of the superintendent. I attended a portion of the meeting. Your general counsel attended. It was a well-attended, long discussion of the issue of 7 members versus 5 members as a board. The waiver application after the consultation, an extensive application was completed on the 19th, and after legal review and a compilation of documents, it was filed on the 20th of May. So we worked very quickly. The next week on the 25th of May, which was either last Wednesday, we received a communication from the CDE, the California Department of Education processes waiver applications for the state board. Our application had been received, all documents present. However, we were scheduled for the September agenda. We questioned about that scheduling and the desire to be on July in order to have at least the potential of implementing a 5-member board for 2022. We were informed, however, that the SBE schedule was completely full, and we would be on the September agenda. One thing to note procedurally at the local level, at the district level, is in order to bring this back up again, you can't decide today to suggest a decrease in the number of members on the board because it's not on the agenda. Using your normal procedures, this would have to be brought forth and placed on an agenda either for the 9th or the 16th and voted on again. Right now, as we sit here, we have 7-member board, and there's going to be by trustee area elections in September with 7 members. So it's going to take board action to change that. So this is where we are. This is the option we're pursuing. Dr. Levitt showed you the schedule for the process, which had the upcoming hearings on the 9th and the 16th. Tentatively, the meeting with the county committee, but I think this is probably going to happen, is scheduled for the 29th. If the county committee approves our 7-trustee area plan and election sequence the next day or the next day or two, we'll withdraw the waiver application. It will be unnecessary, and the election process begins. There is a map has to be into county elections by the 6th of July, and then all sorts of procedures happen to get the election going. I do want to point out that the July state board meeting is on the 12th and I think it's the 13th and the 14th of July. So it would have been tight in any case, but doable. But this is the schedule we are on right now. If you decide at a future meeting that it makes sense for this board to have 5 members, this is what that schedule would look like. The top part of this up till September is exactly the schedule we're on right now. The November 8th, 2022 election would be with 7 trustees. However, 2 months prior, or just about 2 months prior to the election, the State Board of Education would consider the waiver on its agenda. I think the strong likelihood is it will be approved. I would be surprised if it would be denied. But that approval then allows you to proceed with a reduction in the size of the board for 2024 because we're too late for 2022. So we would reopen at some point the mapping process, but you have your maps now. The election rotation would need to be determined based on your 7-trustee area map. And then the 5 areas would be used in 2024. I want to point out that at the county committee level, this is a 2-step process. They would, number one, prior to the waiver app, approve the reduction. Then the election would be waived, and in a subsequent action, they would approve your map. So this is a split implementation of the reconsideration of your board electoral process. This is option 3. It's not out of the question, but it's exceedingly risky. And this is, as I said, and I stand by it, I would be very surprised if your waiver is denied. But if you wanted to go forward for 2022, there are other agencies involved acting under other laws. And while we could talk our heads off, they could refuse to implement your 5-area plan with a default to at-large. So on July 6th, the matter has to go to the county elections. County elections has you right now with 7 trustees elected at large from trustee areas. And without a vote or a waiver, there is a very good chance they would stick with that, because the finalization of the reduction to 5 would not have had either a vote or a waiver. But assuming we get by the county, there would be, we would need to send the 5-area plan, the new 5-area plan, to the county superintendent. County superintendent could refuse and say, well, you know, I don't have authority to call election in a 5-member area. Candidates would begin filing, and they could say, why are we filing in 5 areas when these have not been finally approved? Then we get down to September, where the waiver is on the state board agenda. Waivers can be and often are retroactive. So all of that could be cleared up. But in the meantime, deadlines would have had to be met and other laws followed. And I think it is risky to believe that all that would happen and then all of that would be ignored and cleaned up in September. And then, you know, when you're weighing risk, you look at 2 things. You look at the likelihood of the bad thing occurring, but the consequences if it does. I think the likelihood of your waiver being denied is small, very small. But if it is denied, the consequences of that denial are huge, because we would have conducted an illegal election. So this is the scenario if there were any instruction to go forward for 2022. So I open it up for your questions. As I said, we tried our darndest to get this on July, and we're unable to do that.
Thank you, Ms. Leone. Just a reminder, this is information item and for board discussion. Any questions for Ms. Leone?
I have a question for Ms. Leone, but for you primarily.
Okay.
Currently, the board vote was 4-3 for 7 members, correct? We currently have 7 members.
Yeah, as Ms. Leone
Yeah.
stated, we are at 7 trustee
The
areas.
waiver, which is in progress, is to reduce the board from 7 to 5 members, correct?
Correct.
And according to Ms. Leone, the only way that can be done is if the board, if you put back on the agenda sometime in the future, a vote to discard the 4-3 vote and void it and to vote again. How does that happen?
It happens if we get a request to put it on the agenda for a future item.
Could you be more specific?
If a trustee asks for that option to stay open and put it on the agenda, which has happened, then it will go on to the agenda.
That's a parliamentary procedure I'm quite aware of, and the only people that can put that on is a member of the prevailing vote, okay? And there are a lot of variables. Now, I brought up parliamentary procedure several years ago, and this particular thing here, and was voted down. Said, we don't need parliamentary procedure. So now we're going to bring one up for the convenience to overturn this vote?
President Weinstein?
Thank you, Trustee Commode. Go ahead.
Yes, I made clear when I voted with the majority on the 5 versus 7 issue that I wanted to hear more information. I wanted to see the maps for 5 seats versus the maps for 7 seats. I wanted to hear public input. As a member of the majority on that vote, and after reviewing the maps we've seen so far, I did submit a written request to the board president asking that the item be put back on the agenda for discussion at an appropriate future meeting. And if that's June 9th, that's great. And I believe we're following all proper procedure in doing that. But I was very clear when I was the swing on that vote, just as I was on the swing on approving the application for the waiver. So just to clear the air, request for coming up on a future agenda came from me.
Well, that certainly explains why we're going forward on the waiver. Thank you.
Other board discussion? Questions for Ms. Leone?
This is Kelly. Ms. Leone, if I understand it correctly, option 1 is the simplest as far as, not the simplest as far as risk, but it's the least risky. Option 2 is still on the table, and option 3 just looks to be a mess. Is that about where we're at?
I think that's where we are, and I appreciate your frankness about the analysis.
Thank you.
Thank you, Trustee Kelly. Other board comments, questions? Thank you. Hearing none, moving on to agenda item 6. Board discussion and possible action to give direction to the demographer on draft trustee area maps and proposed sequence of elections. Superintendent Larson Everson gave us an introduction when I went out of order. I would now like to open this item up for board discussion. Go ahead, Trustee Wallet.
Yeah, I have a couple questions. How many permutations with all the variables are available for these maps?
Is that for the demographer, Trustee Wallet?
Yes.
Dr. Levitt, did you hear that question?
I did. How many permutations are available? I mean, there are literally thousands of different ways to draw the lines. Many of them only vary by a line, small block or two here or there. Some of them are very substantial differences. Our goal was to try to give you 2 very distinctive options, but if there was something that we missed out or didn't do right, then one of us could bring you back something better at the next meeting.
I wasn't saying anything was done incorrectly. I was just wondering why only 4 were selected and that the public weren't given a broader selection.
Well, we wanted to start with 4 because normally we would publish between 2 and 4 maps to get the process started. And with the discussion of the 7 versus 5, we were requested to draw 2 7-district maps and 2 5-district maps. And with that, we wanted to make sure that the community saw some options, but also didn't get overwhelmed with the number of maps that could be put out there.
The reason I asked that, Ms. Leone said there would be many more options in 2024, which would be map selection that would be available to the public, which I thought was very reasonable.
Go ahead, Trustee Kelly.
Dr. Levitt, would you mind giving me the deviation for all 4 maps, please?
Absolutely. I have that number right here and pull it up. So starting with map 701. And by the way, these are also, I will say, on the statistics attached for those listening. You can get this on the website as well, so not just here. 701 is 3.6% deviation. 702, 6.2% deviation. 501 is at 4.1% deviation. And 502 is at 6.8% deviation.
Thank you. And you said they are available on the website?
That's right. Each map has the first page where we have the actual map of the districts or the trustee areas. And the second page of the PDF document following that is the statistics or demographics sheet. And in the last column, the total column, the third line down, percent deviation, that'll give you the total deviation.
Okay. Thank you so much. I appreciate that.
Any other board discussion, comment? There was public discussion on this during the public hearing, but are there any questions or comments from the public? Additional? And then I wanted Superintendent Larson Everson, can you verify that a general public information meeting was held last week and give us some information on that?
Yes, President Weinstein, absolutely. We did hold a general public information meeting at Golden Hills last week. I believe that was on Wednesday, the 25th. It was fairly well attended. We had about 15 people who came. We had a few trustees who joined us as well. And it was just a general information session. We had it in a classroom where there's a New Line smart board, so that I was able to demonstrate for those who were there how to interact with the interactive map using that link, and also where on our website they could access all the various documents, maps, the second page having the demographics for each map, etc. The meeting lasted about an hour and a half, with just people being able to ask questions of where to get information, getting additional information about the public hearings and whatnot. And we have another general public information meeting coming up this Saturday at 8:30 here at the district office, and we'll be accessing the New Line board that is in our professional development room, so that if we have community members or parents or staff members who want to come, I can show them directly how to access all of that information as well. Thank you.
Thank you for that update. Any other discussion from the board? Trustee Kelly.
Thank you, President Weinstein. I just want to go back to the fact that we as a board had talked about doing the maps blind. And with that, I don't see it my point to fine tune any of the maps. I think the way they are is the way they are. I know that we looked out into the future as best we could as a board to see how the community is best served. So with that, I do not have any recommendations or changes that I want to see on these maps.
Comments? I wanted to make a comment in that I just wanted to thank Dr. Levitt and the demographers for paying close attention to the criteria so that we could feel comfortable that the criteria we asked for were definitely done for all four of the maps. So thank you for that. Trustee Wood, did you have a comment, or Trustee Scott? I thought I saw a hand.
I just said I agreed with him. He said.
Go ahead.
I agree with Trustee Kelly.
On the microphone. Anything?
I'm also comfortable with the maps, the way they stand.
Thank you.
President Weinstein?
Oh, I'm sorry. Trustee Kermode up there in the sky.
Thank you. Comment and a question. I also agree with Trustee Kelly. The intent was to do them blindly, and the rationale was laid out for the differences in the two sets of maps. I'm comfortable with that. My question is for the superintendent. Has there been any online gathering of responses from the public? Any online commenting that we have a tally of related to the maps at this point?
Thank you, Trustee Kermode. Excellent question. So when we posted our public hearing information, both for June 2nd and June 9th, those were posted well ahead of time, that we had the option, which we availed ourselves of, to make it clear in those postings that someone who was not available to attend a public hearing could submit a question or comment directly to Ms. Amaker's email, and their question or comment would be read during the public hearing. And for this current public hearing, and to date, we have not received any. For our initial public hearing that we had in early May, we did have a few questions that came up, and those were read at that first hearing at that time. There were 2. But for this hearing, we have not received any, and I have yet to receive any for the hearing that will be held on the 9th. Does that resolve your
Thank you.
question? You're welcome.
It does, thanks.
Okay, so it's the board's consensus that the draft maps do meet the directed criteria. No further action is needed. We will move to adjournment. Oh, excuse me. Claudia, please come up.
Claudia Elliott again. I just wanted to note that when I downloaded the maps on I think the 25th, it came as a 2-page PDF, and the back side, or because I print 2-sided, was the demographics. But when I did them today, it only gave me the map. It did not give me the data. So you might want to check your links to make sure that that when they fixed the key, they kept the data, because I did not get that today.
So just for clarification, the original maps as they were posted as 2-page PDFs are still there. Those were not removed. The additional maps that were posted, the 1-pagers with the key, are separate documents because the demographic is connected with that original PDF.
So, because I'd like just to remind you guys, I only talk like this when I'm advocating for public involvement. How would you expect a person to know that they have to go look at the map that you posted 2 weeks ago to get the data? That makes no sense. My other comment, because you didn't call for comments when you talked about the waiver. So my comment on the waiver is...
It was because it was informational only, Ms.
Okay.
Elliott, is why that was.
Okay, but I think I really want to impress on you that when you started this process, you gave the public 24 hours notice that you intended to drop from 7 to 5. Now, 7 exists because the people of this district voted for 7. And when you're asking for a waiver, you're asking the Board of Education to take the place of the people of this district. And so I just want you to be mindful with this waiver business and this rush it through business that you are taking away the right of the people of this district to vote on something if you do that. Thank you.
Thank you. Item number 7, adjournment. There being no further business to come before the board, the meeting was adjourned at approximately 6:26 p.m. Thank you, everyone.